What are some useless scary facts? Lake Superior has dead bodies from the 1920s. With freezing temperatures and a lack of oxygen, bodies don't decompose at the rate they would under normal conditions. Sure, they don't look as fresh as the day they died. In fact, they are covered in bodily fat from saponification, but they can be recognized as human remains. In fact, there's been this ongoing debate because of the ship SS Edmund Fitzgerald that sank in the 70s. Because scuba divers wanted to explore it, but the families of the deceased were upset because this is basically a mass grave. There's a YouTube channel called Ask a Mortician that just did an episode on this, and I really recommend it. She goes a lot more in depth about the facts, and even went out there to talk with a surviving Fitzgerald relative. The lake, it is said, never gives up her dead. I was actually going to suggest the Ask a Mortician video as I was reading your comment, but seems like you were a step ahead. Not exactly useless, but there have been quite a few men who have died at the Grand Canyon because they thought it would be cool to take pee over a ledge, only to lose their balance. By you winning the lottery, you increase your chances of being murdered by a family member or any other person close to you. I've also heard that winning the lottery increases your chance of being the victim of any violent crime, home invasion, theft, and becoming bankrupt. A church in the Czech Republic known as the Sedlec Ossuary or Church of Bones has decoration of skulls and other human bones. It is known for this church to hold remains of up to 40,000 humans. For housing the remains of 40,000 humans, the entire church is about the size of a one-bedroom house. You can have a heart attack and die at any second because of a heart problem you never knew about. There's one called Brugada syndrome which has no physical evidence and most people aren't diagnosed with it until they drop down dead and testing is done on immediate family members. It's genetic, and one of them is diagnosed with it. Happened to my father. We found out because I'm the one tested who has it. My uncle and brother got the all clear. Chances are my granddad has it too. 4 heart attacks since he was in his mid-40s. This happened to a guy I graduated high school with. He was 23 at the time. Nobody could believe it, and there wasn't a clear reason why until after the autopsy. When people are crucified, they rarely die from bleeding out. Instead, they die from asphyxiation or suffocation. The way their bodies are hung makes it almost impossible to breathe unless they physically hold themselves up instead of just hanging there, and after so many hours it gets to be too much, resulting in oxygen deprivation, unconsciousness, and death. Those good old Romans really knew how to make death horrible. Your body produces a cancerous cell about once every 30 minutes. Your immune system is usually very efficient at finding and immediately neutralizing them. But it's very possible that 30 minutes from now will be the time your immune system slips up and allows it to reproduce. I missed 30 seconds ago when I never knew this. Now I am going to be counting seconds. Bed bugs can survive for up to a year without feeding under the correct temperatures. As adults, the females can lay 300 eggs in their lifetimes. You could be spending thousands of dollars and eventually just get infested again. And bed bugs are making a comeback after almost being eradicated. Probably walking around all smug-like. According to some accounts, during the height of the Watergate scandal, Nixon said to someone in a fit of frustration, "I can go in my office and pick up a telephone, and in 25 minutes, millions of people will be dead." There were several, some say numerous, instances where old Dong tried to nuke some people. That one day the planet Mercury will get eaten by the sun, but in the 1% chance it actually flings out of orbit, it's useless to us because we won't be around. It could potentially, mind you it's a low chance for this to happen, hit Venus or maybe even Earth and send flying particles all over the system. The reason why it would get thrown out is because Jupiter is actually tugging on it and making its orbit more elliptical and may eventually get thrown out entirely. Yeet. There have been 32 reported broken arrow incidents in the USA since 1950, many more in former Soviet countries and other nuclear powers. A broken arrow incident is basically an accident where they lost a nuclear weapon. According to some research, a human head may remain conscious for up to 30 seconds after decapitation. Most notably, a man named Dr. Borux did a series of experiments in the early 1900s where he yelled at recently decapitated criminals' heads and saw a response. I love this. I love early science experiments. Totally unethical and not particularly scientific, but we can't prove them wrong because it would be unethical to attempt to do so. When someone dies, the last thing the dying person senses is the sense of hearing, then touch, smell, and taste. The first sense that is usually gone is sight. I'm curious to know how that was discovered. You've probably walked past a murderer. I've gotten kissed by a murderer as a baby. You know nobody fully, you only see the sides they choose to show you. The only person you really, truly know is you, and even then, there's your subconscious. There is a theory in quantum cosmology. It is the hypothesis that our universe is actually a false vacuum, meaning that it isn't in its most stable possible configuration. Think of a ball rolling on a surface having several local minima, dents in the surface, but there is only one global minima, the dent which is the deepest. The ball may be in one of the dents which is not the deepest one, so it is stable for now, but given the chance it will slide to the deepest dent, which is the lowest energy configuration possible, the so-called true vacuum. Now the interesting part, if our universe is, indeed, in a false vacuum, due to something called quantum tunneling, it may tunnel into the true vacuum, creating a bubble of lower energy. Once this lower energy bubble is formed, it expands, engulfing the entire universe, destroying everything we know as is, and creating new laws of physics. The speed of expanding is the speed of light, so we would have no information whatsoever about it before it hits us. We will literally never see it coming. The really scary and really useless part, there is absolutely nothing we can do about it. It is currently believed that all quantum fields in the universe have reached their vacuum state, but we're not actually sure about the Higgs boson field. If the Higgs boson is actually in a false vacuum, then at any time, that field might collapse. To the layman, that event would lead to three things. All laws of chemistry are changed or undone. The standard model of physics is wrong. A sphere of expanding energy centered on the source of the collapse would radiate throughout the universe, destroying all matter in its way, into infinity. All because one quantum field might not be at its lowest energy level like we think it should be. I still don't understand that enough to be afraid of it. The Andromeda Galaxy getting closer at 430,000 kilometers per hour, but it will hit the Milky Way in 4 billion years, and anyway, the stars are so distant from each other that just a few of them will be destroyed. Dogs love squeaky toys cause it reminds them of a dying prey animal. Scientists don't know what matter is like inside neutron stars, but some theorize it's a kind of strange matter that, if it exists, may turn everything it touches into strange matter. If two neutron stars collide, which does happen, microscopic strange matter particles could fly through space until they eventually reach Earth, at which point the planet and everything on it would turn into strange matter and be destroyed. Neat. Someone you love will probably get dementia, and it will freaking suck. The human brain is a machine, and like any machine it inevitably breaks down. Imagine a person you love. Imagine their mind starts dying before their body. They cease to be the person you knew, a little bit at a time. They lose their memories, the cherished and the mundane. Then they start looking at their loved ones in terror because nothing makes sense and everyone seems like a stranger. It's nature at its most cruel. Frick dementia. I literally lost my nan to dementia today. Feels bad, man. Some of your friends might just pretend to like you because you are useful to them and you don't realize it because they are just great at hiding it. You can have a heart muscle disease and never know it, and possibly die. True story. My dad had a cardiac arrest last November. He's 49 years old, because apparently he has a heart muscle disease. Never showed any signs. Works out regularly. Relatively young. And he almost died out of nothing. A good portion of spiders shed their exoskeletons occasionally, so when you happen to come across a dead spider, there's a good chance that it's just an empty husk and there is another, slightly bigger spider nearby. I hate you. Years ago I saw an episode of Monsters Inside Me where this guy was doing something outside and a fly flew into his eye. It only made contact for about a microsecond, but it was enough time for it to lay eggs. After they hatched they started eating his eye from the inside and he was starting to go blind until a doctor figured out what was wrong. Ever since then I get super paranoid whenever a fly goes anywhere near my face because of the scary fact that something like this could possibly happen to me. Okay, thank you. I hate you now. I have always been paranoid about my eyes as it is, but this takes the cake. Building my permanent residence bomb shelter now. Chances of experiencing terrorism are crazy low, but a friend of mine called in sick to work on the 22nd of March 2016. He works in Zaventem, Brussels, airport at the desk next to the American Airlines one. Terrorist blew himself up there that day. Friend would have been there if not for a mild stomach flu. He was investigated afterwards in case his absence meant he knew something was going to happen. I have two friends who worked in the Twin Towers in 2001 and both went there on 9/11 because of random occurrences. One overslept causing them to run late and the other had a sick child she needed to take to the doctor. It's strange how what can feel like a hectic or bad morning is actually better than the alternative. There are some parts of the universe that we'll never, ever be able to see. No matter what we do, they'll always remain just out of reach. That's why we call the part we can see the observable universe. For those that don't know, this happens because the universe is expanding faster than the speed of light. There is a guy in the world who died from the most minor injury, and somehow, this half-bothered comment is the one that turns out to have thousands of upvotes. I've read about cases where a stubbed toe caused death. There are a bunch of rare diseases and disorders, like Alport syndrome, Bloom syndrome, Riley-Day syndrome and Tay-Sachs disease, that almost exclusively occur in Ashkenazi Jews. My sister and I both have Alports, renal failure, hearing loss, even though our parents don't. After the Holocaust, since so many of us were killed, these diseases have become increasingly common in the Ashkenazi Jewish population. I don't know how useless this is, but you are never 100% safe. Think about it, no matter what scenario you put yourself in, there will always be some sort of countermeasure. Let's say you built a concrete room that is 10 inches wide with no doors and windows underground. An earthquake could happen, a sinkhole could open up, a ravine could open up, etc. No matter how safe a situation sounds, it can never be 100% safe. Free will doesn't exist, and for all you know an atom right next to you could explode by pure chance, or you could get consumed by vacuum decay. Alive humans burn rather easily in a low heat fire. The hair and skin go first, then eyeballs will easily boil, burst, then explode, and the scary thing is, if you've got a high pain threshold you'll feel the whole process as your insides boil and explode, and skin slips off the bone, while you scream your way to death. As the voice box is heavily protected, if it's a low heat fire the human was caught in, then all that's left behind is a carbonized skeleton with tissue fibers still attached. High heat fire and all that's left is ashes. Frick you. Human buttholes can stretch out to 7 inches without tearing, and a raccoon can fit in a hole as tight as 4 inches. You're welcome. I wonder what kind and how many experiments they performed before they realized 7 inches was the limit before it would tear. Just because you're dead doesn't mean you immediately stop perceiving stimulations around you. It takes a bit for your brain to die of oxygen deprivation and shut down. So there's a good chance that when you die that you're trapped in your body realizing you're dead with no way to stop it. This fact has been semi-confirmed by people who experience temporary death in hospitals and recall nurses and doctors rushing around them trying to revive them. I'm not sure I believe this. It's contradictory that most people will be unaware of their surroundings when they lose consciousness, but they don't die. But this suggests when people die they stay conscious before actually dying. Maybe there are some people who have never lost consciousness and have good blood flow to the brain if the heart stops, but they are probably in a very small minority. Alright, I collected some of my favorite scary facts from an app I really like called Thunder Dungeon. They have all types of memes and facts and stuff, so it was all written in pictures. I had to manually write them down. 1. There's an episode of Sesame Street that had to be pulled off the air in 76 feet cause it was so scary. Parents complained their children are screaming in horror at the TV. 2. There's a disease nicknamed Ondine's Curse, which causes sufferers to die if they fall asleep. 3. On the 26th of August 1968, every TV in America shut down for 25 seconds. There was a murmuring sound coming from the TV and people reported hearing a demon. 4. In 1994 a man was arrested for dressing as the Grim Reaper and standing outside old people's homes. 5. It only takes about 7 pounds of pressure to rip off an ear. 6. There is an island in Italy that is supposedly so haunted that the government forbids the public from visiting it. 7. There's a syndrome called Charles Bonnet syndrome that have been called a window into a parallel universe. People who has it are prone to seeing bright lights, weird shapes and scary faces. The thing about this syndrome is that all those who suffer from it are almost exclusively blind or vision impaired. 8. When a bear attacks you, he will most likely start eating you alive rather than killing you first. 9. At any possible moment, Earth could be hit by a gamma ray burst which will extinguish most if not all life on the planet. 10. A woman in St. Louis was watching a TV documentary about a serial killer who tortured and killed women when she realized she was living in his former apartment. 11. There's a caterpillar so poisonous, just brushing your finger onto it can cause internal bleeding in your brain. 12. In 1942, a man known as the Phantom Barber would break into people's house while they were sleeping to steal a lock from their hair. He was never identified. 13. There's a fish called a stonefish. It's so venomous that if you step on it you could die in 20 minutes. 14. According to a recent study, 1 in 5 CEOs demonstrated psychopathic traits. Another population with similar proportions of psychopaths is the prison population. 15. There was a guy from New York who owned a car with the license plate 5V1732. He died on the 17th of May, 1932. That's all folks. A standard uranium fission reactor loses a significant portion of its energy of fission as neutrino, not to be confused with neutron, radiation that is not stopped by shielding. In fact, the entire Earth is unlikely to stop a neutrino. But that's nothing. You are being bombarded with even more neutrino radiation from the sun, day and night. Night too because, again, the entire thickness of the Earth does not effectively stop neutrinos. However, the thing is, neutrinos are insubstantial ghost particles. They pass through anything without having any effect whatsoever except in very rare cases. They are phenomenally difficult to detect, because they almost never interact with a detector, even the best designs we can think of. Those things are small, even for a atom standard they are small. No wonder they don't interact with matter because it just misses it. When you are driving, you are just one small distracted moment away from ramming your car into someone else, possibly hurting them and spending years in jail. You never stop watching with your eyes, even when you close them. Another one. This topic will be dead in few days. This question will be reposted for years. For me, it's the fact that you can go crazy at any point, and even worse, you could have already lost it and you'd have a great chance of never finding out, making it virtually impossible to stop the trip downwards. There are rogue planets out there that drifted away from their solar system and are now just flying through space waiting to collide with anything. They are undetectable as they're in the dark and completely frozen from not having any light. Everyone keeps posting death facts, but to me living is a lot scarier. For example, there's a syndrome called locked-in syndrome where you have full body paralysis but are also fully conscious. Imagine living for decades, trapped in your own mind. There's a disease some alcoholics get where varicose veins, varices, grow in their esophagus. Unless they are eradicated and drinking ceases, the varices will continue to grow until they burst and the person dies by vomiting up their own blood as they bleed out. Catfish have more taste buds than humans, so they would be much better at cooking food if they were as evolutionarily advanced as mankind. I think it is scary because I imagine just a yellow catfish screaming roar and Gordon Ramsay becoming a nobody. There is poop everywhere. Bad smells from your mouth and pits. Bacteria crap, blackheads, facial septic tanks. Your hands? Still got poop on them from that time you touched your butthole 3 months ago, hand washing and all. Everyone who prepares your food, including yourself, has money and doorknob poop all over their hands, and washing just makes it clean enough to eat. Something less useless, but just horrifying. Those bathroom dryers circulate and heat bathroom air that is full of poop micro spray. You are spray painting your hands with poop every time you use one of those wall dryers after washing your hands. No one has mentioned the prion disease that forces you to stay awake until you die yet. Very rare, but it can happen to you. People have done the calculations on what would happen if Yellowstone erupted. That main big thing would be ash. Lots and lots of ash. Feet of it, even as far as Washington or California, or more eastward, Illinois and Michigan, causing millions to be displaced from their homes. As you get closer to the epicenter, buildings will start collapsing due to the immense weight of the ash. The air would be beyond poisonous to breathe, and if you're unlucky enough to be in Idaho or Montana when it happens, you'll basically just die. Luckily, the last time Yellowstone blew up was 500,000 years ago, and with new seismic tech we'd be able to see an eruption coming. Not that we'd be able to do a whole lot about it. Just the ocean. I love seafood, but dang WTF is with the crap in there. And also whatever sickness happens when you rise to the surface too fast, or when equipment fails when you're really far down. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.